the shop at the end, looking onto the street.
Opposite is the Chitty, the Posts, which in earlier times was blocked to horse traffic by bollards by the road end and a stile at the top, which gave it its name. The 1788 map does not show the posts in its present position, but a path further down, about parallel with the dyke that runs between Back Lane and Main Street. Relatively recently, another footpath, now closed, ran in a curve from approximately opposite the gate to Oak Close in Back Lane to the gateway of Redland House.
From the posts, views of the land opposite have changed a great deal in the past 15 years, and from the same position, looking north towards the pub, the grounds of 3 cottages are now the site of 2 bungalows. The cottages were occupied by families whose names appear in the history of Cropwell over many years, and whose descendants are still in the village, the Spencers, the Campbells, and the Simpsons.
The Plough is the only remaining inn left of the 3 that used to serve the village. Until late in the last century, the pub was a quaint, dilapidated, partly thatched building. At about the turn of the century, the thatched end was demolished and replaced by the present Edwardian extension. The roadside end was also heightened and re-roofed. The 1960s addition of the doorway and lavatories more or less demolished any architectural charm that the building may have had. Publicans have come and gone. The names most remembered are William Tythby, William Derry, Fred Burrows, Mick and Jill Newton, and Juliet Hand.
Parnham's shop was opposite the pub. In the last century, for many years, the house was the home of Charles Clark, the well-known castrator, a tall, powerful and very active man who, according to William Baldock, probably drank more intoxicating liquor than any other man in the country over which he travelled. He died in 1878, aged 77. The shop was in existence from quite early in the century and became the post and telegraph office for the village for many years, run by Mr. and Mrs. Shipside. When Mr. Shipside died, his widow moved the post office to Inglenook, which is halfway along Main Street, and for 15 years she continued the business from there. In 1953, the Parnhams took the post office back to their shop, where it stayed until 1978 when, at the time that the site was sold for development, Peter and Sally Lambert opened the post office in Butler's Close, and there it remained until 1996.
Next to Parnham's, at what is now Carpenter's Close 1 to 7, stood Holroyd's Yard, the only remaining building of which is the granny extension to number 1 Carpenter's Close, which was the joiner's shop for many years. Here worked Ernest Smith until the late 30s, making coffins, cartwheels, gates, doors, window frames, handles, and acting as village undertaker. School children would stare through the windows in the roadside wall on their way to school to see the coffins on the trestles waiting to be completed. The existing building has a small door above the window. This was used to load long timbers for storage on the rafters. Mr. Ragsdale remembers the yard being full of trees for seasoning. There was a saw pit, and 2 skilled sawmen came to cut them up, and the best planks were used for coffin boards.
On the opposite side, next to the pub, is the old Mort House. Formerly belonging to the Plough, it fell into disuse and became a cobbler's shop owned by another Mr. Shipside.
The first I can remember about the Malt House was when Walter Shipside used to keep the post office before I could remember. I can't remember him keeping the post office. It was his brothers took over, when I can first remember. But this Walter Shipside, he lived in the Malt House, and he was part-time cobbler. He spent a lot of his time up at the Elms, which is now the Cropwell Court, And Danny Moore lived there at that time. Well, later on, when I was in my teens, after I left school, the lads hadn't much to do, and winter nights, and where he used to do his cobbling was in like an attic at the end of the old house. He used to go up some wooden steps, and there was a big door, used to drop down. You used to have to push the door up to get through. It had a weight on it. It was, like, as you push the door, the weight took the weight of the door.
Yeah.
And then you pushed it too after you got in. It was a fairly big attic. And he used to do his cobbling in there, an old oil lamp he used to use. And he used to let the lads, and well, up to about perhaps 17 or 18, go in there winter nights. There'd often be round about, perhaps a dozen or 15 there, and either playing a game or having a sing-song. Lots of lads in those days had mouth organs,
Yeah.
I had one right from when I was 7, and we used to play the old songs, and hymns sometimes, and he used to join in, because he was in the church choir, which was opposite side of the road, the Chapel of Ease, He was a good singer, and I think he enjoyed it as well as we did.
Next door is Orchard House, built in 1861 and from 1870 until the early part of the century, belonging to Walter Cockayne, butcher and farmer. Its predecessor was an old thatched house belonging to another butcher, William Innocent, who died in 1854, and his nephew, who lived there until 1870. The building now used as a garage alongside the road was a slaughterhouse. The descendants of Mr. Cockayne still run his farm, then called Pike's Farm, but today known as Top Brackendale on the Foss. More recently, the property was bought by the Forths of the court, and the house was used by their gardener, Mr. MacArthur.
The Chapel of Ease had a checkered history. Built at the expense of Mr. George Parr in 1845, it cost £400. Mr. Parr also bought the organ for a further £70. The chapel remained in use for church services until 1879. The doorway was then bricked up and the building used as a barn by Henry Smith, until in 1897 the Reverend F. Kersham, curate of the parish, bought it for £200, enlarged and reopened it. At a service conducted by the Bishop of Southwell, the chapel was dedicated to St. Peter. In the 1930s, the altar, pew ends and other furnishings were carved in oak by W.F. Pudding Green, a noted local farmer who lived at Mahon, and only took up carving in his 70th year. Some of his carvings can still be seen in Tythby Church. Falling attendance brought about the demise of the chapel as a place of worship, and it was sold, and after long consideration by the planning authority, it was converted to a private house during the 80s.
Behind the Chapel of Ease stands what was the old school. The school was built in 1845, again through Mr. George Parr's effort and expense. Mr. Parr enlarged the school in 1859, and with the introduction of government control and grants from the Department of Education, a further enlargement brought its capacity up to 110 children. The headmaster, Mr. Charles Goodwin, who took his post at the age of 26 in 1862, raised the standard of education in the village, acted as overseer of the poor, and took a full part in village life. His wife, son and daughters were also active as teachers or assistants in the school, until suddenly on December the 24th, 1893, Mr. Goodwin died aged 57. He was followed by Mr. Hall, who managed the school rather less effectively until 1904, but at least by dint of his efforts to raise money, partitions to separate the classes and improved heating were installed to make things easier for both teachers and children. He was followed by Mr. Nathaniel Saxton, and because of the new regulations, new books and new subjects were introduced, and the minimum age for teachers was raised to 18. Until then, the school had been staffed by temporary teachers as young as 12 years 11 months, and appointed a teacher at the age of 14 and a half. In 1909, a new school was ready. The well-built building with 3 classrooms of 20 feet by 20 feet, each accommodated 40 children, a main hall, 2 cloakrooms and an entrance for boys and girls. There was a large playground, divided by railings to segregate the boys from the girls, and a garden. What a change from the long cold room with the screen which had served the children so well for so many years.
Playtime, we used to get out of there if we could, or dinner time, we used to go over and go sliding on the pond, you see, if we could.
Yeah.
And at night, everybody used to congregate there, used to play a type of ice hockey on it. But he used to come down with his skates. He used to be able to skate backwards, you know, and he used to be able to do a figure 8.
Yeah. On the pond?
On the pond, and he did a figure 8 and he fell in because the ice went in with it. Divided into plots,
Yeah.
you know, with a path down. Only a narrow, you only had a narrow strip, something like this, you know, just big enough to grow a few bits of everything.
Yeah.
Nicely
Did you
rounded up, you know.
Yeah. Did you actually learn anything?
Learn it?
You know, gardening. I mean, did they teach you gardening, or did you just pick it up as you went along?
Oh no, Mr. Barlow, he taught you how to garden.
Double digging?
Digging and everything, he'd
Yeah.
show you how to do everything. Oh yes, teachers did everything, you know,
Yeah.
didn't they?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, he used to come out with you when you went in there and show you what to do.
Yeah.
But he did his own garden there, of course, he had a nice garden.
Yeah.
And used to get a prize for the best garden.
Dig for victory.
Oh, before those days.
Yeah.
The old school became a sort of village hall for many years, used for meetings and other gatherings. Eventually it was sold, used by Cuthbert Smith as a chicken house, and latterly became a workshop cum store for the owner of Beach Cottage, who had a soft furnishings business. Behind the school was a walled vegetable garden belonging to Rookery Farm. Here fruit and vegetables and glasshouse produce were grown.
Well, this garden belonged to Rookery as well.
Did
you
it?
know. Over here.
Yeah.
You know, every big house had a walled
Yeah, that was...
garden. Well, this was the walled garden belonging to Rookery. You just have to come across the field to it,
Yeah.
you see, from...
And that, when you remember, that was when Mr. Green
I
owned
can remember Green's living
it.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, my father, he used to work in the garden there.
Yeah.
And when we used to come out to play, he used to throw his pears and things over into the playground for the kids.
Yeah.
You won't get into trouble now.
No.
Well, it's, you know what it is, don't you? It's a granary.
Oh, right.
Granary belonging to the Rookery Farm,
Yeah.
where they used to store corn.
Yeah.
And that's why the windows were all in. You used to open the windows for it to wind to blow through to dry
Yeah.
the corn.
In recent years, the whole area was redeveloped as housing. The old school is now a private dwelling.